messages in your love. It's something to relate to you. Please take my hand. You can show me where I stand. There's something to relate to you.
Just have a day and a here with a really good friend of ours who we have known for a long, long time. Colm Quearney, you're very welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Here, fuck off, will you? Fresh, yeah?
Shut the fuck up!
The link between spoofing and fantasy, right? So I'll give you an example, right? When I walk the dogs on my own, right, I fantasize. You know, I'd be listening to fucking Talking Heads and thinking, I was the singer with Talking Heads, you know, like, what about the time? And you're like, so there's a fantasy in that, right? So that's a bit of a spoof. But when you say that to people, when I'm saying it to people saying, yeah, I fantasize about being the fucking singer and leading Talking Heads or something, they go, why, yeah, I do that, that's normal. But it's a spoof. It is a spoof.
Well, you could also say it's the law of attraction. I used to do that when I was a teenager, and that's how I became a musician.
Now, I'm 56 years of age, Colm, and I'm walking down the road thinking I'm the singer of Talking Heads, when clearly David Byrne is the singer in Talking Heads, right?
Yeah, it's a different thing.
I used to lie in bed thinking I was Michael Jackson dancing and all.
That's grand when you're 13, I think, but when you're 56, right, the spoofing thing for me was a couple of things. One was the real Irish thing. You know, you hear the story. This was my spoof. I crashed into the back of a fella who was driving a van full of helium balloons, and I jumped out and ran out to him. And I said, yeah, all right. It's an amount of hurt me eye. So, right? Yeah. But I told that as if it actually happened. I was just seeing a fella with helium balloons in a van, and I thought, imagine he got crashed into da. So there's a bit of that, right? There's a bit of storytelling, Shanachie, spoofing, which is kind of safe enough, right? But then there's another one where you feel your story isn't good enough. You feel you're less important in the room. So there's fellas in the room saying, yeah, we were on tour and fucking Slash jumped up on the stage with us or something like that, and you're like, how do I tell a better story than that? Now, the reality was, right, I do tell stories that are great, but they're just about funny things that happen around Ballymun and all that kind of stuff, and they're brilliant. But I wouldn't have had the confidence to believe that they were brilliant, you know. There's times, especially when I was really unaware and all that kind of stuff, I would have been Johnny Hoofing. Now, I still do the Shanachie bit. I'll still, you know, when I'm talking to people and I'm having the crack, I'll put me in the first person because it works better. When I'm telling you a story and I said, you heard about the fella who, so you've already lost it, right? The fella who, okay, who's he? You're trying to picture it. Whereas I say to you, I was on a plane last week and this happened. You know what I mean? You're quicker into the story. I mean, Dad was teaching me when I was telling jokes, get into the thing quick and get out of it quicker. So you're telling the joke, get in and get out, but you know when you tell a joke and they say there's three versions of what happened, and then your man at the end, it's subverted then, like, you know what I mean? So I'd be saying 4 examples and then the subversion, right? He'd say to me, just do 2 and then get the subversion in, you know what I mean? So I would have learned that, the art of storytelling, you know what I mean? I would have learned it from telling jokes. I would have learned it from, my dad's a great storyteller, you know, he's a great, like, my dad has a story that I don't know whether it's true or not, right? He knew a fella who worked in Fleetwood's, the paint place, and he said to him in the pub, any chance of a bit of paint? I'm going to paint the fucking sitting room for the communion. And he said, yeah, Mick, I'll leave, drop down Saturday. I want to get you a load of paint. So my dad went over on Saturday and he said, is Johnny there? He said, Mick, Johnny died yesterday. He had a heart attack and woke and he's dead. And my dad said, without blinking, he didn't say anything about a few tins of paint. You know what I mean? No, I don't know whether I don't know whether that's true.
But then the next part is, does it matter that it's true? Because when everyone's laughing, and I suppose the biggest crime to commit is telling a story and it's not working or it's not funny. Yeah, all is forgiven once people are laughing.
You see, I had to give up to Johnny Hoofing because it was fantasy.
Yeah, but if you wrote all those down, it's creative writing. It's a book.
It's also stand-up comedy, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be able for stand-up. I don't think I'll be able for the heckle. Yeah, brutal. I'll be like, oh no.
You're good at the quick-witted disarmament.
So are you, Dean. I've seen you on stage and you're amazing with that stuff.
So that's where it comes in. You just have to get over the fear. Feel the fear and do it. Anyway, the courage. It's like you jumping up on bleeding stage. I remember you telling me a story and it just wasn't working. It wasn't your fucking crowd, like, you know. That's something that very few people get to experience.
There was one time I told the audience to fuck off and leave in the International. That was just before Aidan Bishop came in on the Saturday night. No, there was one night I was doing a gig with Aslan in Athlone, and there was like techno music playing before it. Like, I've had loads of those different types of gigs, and I was at the Going All the Way Down to do support, and I was just trying to promote my first album and just get out there and do stuff. And it was just me and an acoustic guitar, and you were playing this techno. It was full of stews, just like push, 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 stop, and then me just standing there, and then everyone just turns around. And it was the weirdest just
I was there that night,
juxtaposition. You were probably there, yeah. It was so extreme that my brain just flipped, and I went, I'm just going to actually just play the songs as if everyone's listening, or that I'm playing them for myself. Say about 1,500 people there. One or two people come up afterwards and said, wow, fucking, I don't know what zone you were in, but that was great. But everyone was talking and everyone was drinking. And
I done a
gigs
gig in, what's the Aussie bar on Parallel Street? The Woolshed, because you were trying to do comedy everywhere. Do it in here, do it over here. And not everywhere works, just like for music. Not everywhere works. But you just have to get up and do it anyway. It's kind of like the way they do it in America. They do it in bleeding strip clubs and all. Just get up and fucking do it.
Yeah.
Cut your teeth. But anyway, there was a pool final on or something. Two lads playing a game of pool like at the stage, and everyone was there to watch the pool. But there was a comedy gig on as well. I think your man was trying to double bleeding job the whole place. You just jump up there and do 20 minutes while that pool game is on. And then like, this is the weirdest fucking thing. So you just have to get up and just do the jokes. If they're funny, you might get a laugh. Even if they're not funny, just fucking get up and do them.
You have to get up on the stage as many times as possible in as many weird situations as possible, so that you own the stage and it becomes your space, because it feels really alien. You're afraid to get on it at the start, but then the more familiar that you come with it, and actually those odd gigs, when you get that confidence, you can just buzz off them more. But it's also really difficult. There's not, like a lot of those gigs are, to be honest with you, a pain in the hole. But you are cutting your teeth. But I couldn't do them anymore. Like, I'd rather just not gig, do something else. I think you can do them for a certain period where you're actually learning something from the experience. But as soon as you become really good at it, there's nothing for you there anymore.
Can you remember the first time you were on stage?
Well, I remember being up in Finglas in my nanny's house and standing up. Someone put me up on a table and I sang a song. And then afterwards, someone gave me a plate to walk around the room, and everyone started putting money into it.
Yeah, that's deadly, isn't it?
And I remember thinking,
you got bitten by the bug.
I went, Jesus, there's something in this. Yeah. I remember being on stage at school things, playing bass and playing guitar, and really being nervous. But then just, again, the bug after it. It's like I'm at the doing it and people coming up to you afterwards, you know. And then I remember doing the No Names clubs. Do you remember the No Names clubs?
Yeah.
Palmerstown, Blanchardstown.
They were a great concept, the No Names Club.
Yeah, weren't they? So they're non-alcoholic for teenagers, weren't they?
That's right,
the vibe, yeah.
Everybody turned up banjoed. I remember that time being nuts. If my nephews and nieces did the things that I did at the ages I done, like I was smoking at 9. I started picking up butts off the ground at 9 and smoking them. Now, I was a pretty wild kid, I was. And I was in the Artane band, and we used to walk home and walk behind. Everybody smoked then. So people would throw away half a smoke when they were going into a gaff, and we'd jump on it and smoke it. And I remember somebody saying to me, "What age did you give the smokes up, Sparky?" I said 10. It was a different time. In the youth centre I work in, there's a huge revival in music. Big revival. You know, young people picking up guitars. There's one young person who learned to play the drums in 4 weeks. Like, he is absolutely top of the pops, like, you know what I mean? And he has a great ear for it and all that kind of stuff. And then there's other young people who are learning by TikTok. So if you said to them, play a G chord there, they're looking at you going, I don't know how to, but they're playing amazingly stuff. They're playing great stuff. So there's a revival, and I remember the punk thing, you know, I remember the first gig I seen in school. A band got up and played Public Image Limited. The Public Image, you got what you wanted. And the excitement for me in the audience that I knew Brayo was the drummer and Bleeding Harry was the bass player and, you know, Skin was the guitarist and all, was mind-blowing. And then I remember going to an 18th or a 21st or something like that, in where the Regency was, I think it might have been called the Carlton or something like that was facing my school. But I went in there and I heard 2 bands that night with the DJ. One was the Rolling Stones, and I heard you talking about this song before in an interview. down, 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 down. And I remember the blood going. I mean, that song must have been 10 or 15 years old at that stage, or 20 years old at that stage, right? Because that was the 80s. But the feeling of that music going through me was like, wow, what's this? And then I heard U2 that night as well. I heard 11 O'Clock TikTok. They had just released it as a single and they played it. And I Will Follow was as well. And it was just like, music is amazing. This is amazing. And it was just that time. Because everything else was, to me, was dark and grey and boring and there was nothing really going on, like, you know what I mean? And then next thing, bam, bam.
Yeah. I think music is, for teenagers, is perfect. I don't think it's necessarily a revival. I think it's a constant. It just works all the time. I've worked with both of you doing community work with like teenagers, and through generations to generations, I'm still doing it, like, you know, doing summer camps, protest song format, songwriting workshops, and they're perfect because, like you described there, when you're a certain age, music just seems to be the thing. There's loads of stories where it just switches on one day.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear Liam Gallagher's story about getting a bang of a hammer? He wasn't interested in music at all. And he was a teenager. He got into a fight in where he was living, and someone hit him with a hammer. And he ended up in hospital, and he woke up and he heard Like a Virgin by Madonna. And he was like, what's that? You know what I mean? It was the most euphoric thing he ever heard. Like, and then from that, it was just, music was just switched on. But that's like, I think, like, without the hammer, like it happened for me here in, you know, Satisfaction with the Stones. But I think for all the generations of teenagers, like, I'm aware that it works. And when you get out of their way and facilitate a workshop, because the older you get, music's cool for teenagers. When you create an environment for them just to write lyrics and...
There's spaces for it. Like, I'm watching this show called Camden. So it's all about where Camden is, what went on there, who came up there, who was inspired there. Having places like that, like, we live in a city like that. Dublin was our Camden.
Yeah.
And you get it when you're a teenager. There's some influences you might get at home. Like, I remember sitting down with me dad and he'd be listening to Johnny Cash and I'm like, I just don't fucking get this. But now as an adult, I get it.
But Johnny Cash would have been his punk rock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when I was like 13, 14, listening to hip hop, that's when it kicks in. You've been hanging around the gaff with your brothers and sisters, your man, your dad, and then all of a sudden, something rips. Punk rock or fucking
You
hip
gotta
hop.
fight for your rights.
But also having a place, having a scene, having a city, having music shops, having the fashion and all that type of gear. What was that Colm Quearney like?
Well, Dublin, like in the 80s, there was a phrase that was like, Dublin, the city of 1,000 bands. And I think like a lot of it was coming off the back of U2, but there was also just incredible, like when I was a teenager, I was going to see bands and you see 4 or 5 bands in the bag. But the bands were amazing, like really, really good bands that probably never made any recordings. No one had any money. Those people were probably sharing instruments or just really excited about getting on the stage. It happened in Manchester then probably a few years after. There's always been a lot of bands in Dublin, a lot of really, really good bands. And even now, there's a whole new generation of, you know, incredible talent that have new media to share their music and their creativity, which is brilliant. But it's a different time. Like back in the 60s, like you had to, what you done in your spare time is you got into a room and you set up drums and you made songs or you done cover versions. I think now people they actually document their stuff, they record it. You know what I mean? They do recordings and they use technology, whether it's computers or their phones, to create things and to share them.
I'm looking at you and I'm thinking of Fat Boy from Brick Nasty, who we had on a couple of weeks ago. I'm drawing some comparisons and I'm looking at where he's going to be when he's 51 years of age.
What old is he?
He's a young... 23 years of age.
Yeah.
He started off in a youth centre in Ballymun in a bleeding old storage room, banging on a bleeding rusty guitar, you know?
Yeah.
With a load of lunatics, and then was in a place and a time that was just ready for something new and for something different. That's what you grew up in as well. You were in a band.
Well, there was a long time when I wasn't in a band. I was at home bored, and I was a bit of a homeboard as well. When I heard that Rolling Stones riff, I went looking because I knew my dad had guitars, but then I realised they were bass guitars. So I just started playing bass. Just nothing to do, so I was just sitting at home playing for hours. My ma was really encouraging. She goes, one day I'll have a band and one day I'll do a gig. And I was like, no, that'll never happen. You know, but I'll just keep playing anyway. And the band that blew me away then after, say, hearing the Stones would have been Stiff Little Fingers, which again, perfect, because I was a teenager. I was really, really angry about a lot of things. There was a lot of political stuff going on in the 80s. I'd kind of grown up in a kind of sort of political background, and there was a lot of stuff going on. And then Stiff Little Fingers were kind of perfect because they had this kind of position of being not interested politically, but yet there was absolute anger and aggression in their music. So it's perfect for a kind of my teenage angst. So I kind of listened to their records, listen to vinyl. I bought vinyl. My godmother gave me one of those old record players that you just open up. And that was it. Just listening to records and kind of listening along. And then my dad bought myself and my brother an acoustic guitar. And then my cousin Anto played. And the three of us just got into kind of some sort of competitive spirit that was positive. And we were just teaching each other. And again, this was in the late 80s, early 90s, and there was some sort of 60s revival. It was all about learning, or maybe it's just learning good music. It was all blues, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles. There was just, probably like you're talking about Brick Nasty, there was something that happened in those few years for me. There was a lot of hours put in, and there was a lot of competition with my brother and my cousin, and it was a healthy competition. And he lived in Finglas, so he'd bring people out from Finglas to our music shed. We had a shed that my dad built, and so we could keep an eye on us. And he'd bring out these amazing, like, guitar players. And it was all about swapping riffs and sharing things off each other. And there was a whole thing where, like, if you didn't bring something to the table, I remember my cousin Anto got pissed off with us, and he'd start playing stuff where he wouldn't let us see what he was doing. He was like, no, if I'm giving you something, you have to give me something. And then I knew when he was coming out next time, I'd have to have something. So I'd have to listen to a record and do the work. There was no YouTube. You'd have to listen to it and try and get the riff down, and you'd be putting the needle back on. And for me, to be honest with you, I didn't have a great ear for music. Like, I had to develop it over years. It was really hard work. I have a natural feeling for expression. You know what I mean? I think I'm quite expressive when I play, but having like perfect pitch, that wouldn't have been me at all. But I've developed it over the years. But anyway, my cousin had like a brilliant ear, and he could pick out loads of stuff. I was really jealous of that. It was good. That was the competition. You had to, if he was going to give you Money by Pink Floyd, you had to give him Hey Joe by Jimi Hendrix. You know what I mean? It was.
So it was like swords, sharpening swords.
Yeah.
This is how we're all gonna fucking rise up and get better.
Yeah. And there was a couple of years of that. There was a sweet spot of a few years where then when I actually went from the bedroom and the house out into public, like, school teachers were like, you know, I remember one teacher in particular saying, wow, you know, there's...
Who was that?
Paul Mercier. Yeah. So, yeah.
What school was that in?
It's in Greendale. Yeah.
Paul was a playwright, wasn't he, Colm?
Yeah, he was a playwright, and Paul was a brilliant playwright, and is a brilliant playwright, and worked with the Passion Machine, set up the Passion Machine in the 80s, and then it turned out that my dad worked with them doing tailoring, and my mother and my sister ended up doing stuff. And Paul took me aside one day and just said, you're really, really good. You know what I mean? And I remember walking away thinking, why did he say that? Or I nearly felt like indignant or something, like it's none of his business.
Does he know that?
No, probably not. He probably can't remember.
I remember I had a school teacher, Hugh Daly, and during COVID, I got to interview him on a podcast like this, and we recorded it. And he would be like a well-known primary school teacher in Ballymun, and a lot of people would look up to him. And I said to him, you changed my life by saying one simple thing: put your chin up and put your shoulders back. And he said, I fucking said that to everyone.
Okay. Yeah.
But for me, it was the thing at the time. And in the work that me and Sparky do, we say stuff to people all the time.
Yeah.
And we say it in the knowledge that the penny will drop for some of them and it won't drop for others, you know.
No, you're dead right. And that's that's my philosophy. Like, when I'm doing youth work, I'm aware of the little things that were said to me. Like I say, it takes seconds to say them. It makes you realise as well that the opposite, the negative, can probably have the same amount of effect. So I'd be quite aware when I'm around young people to use, I don't know what you call it, remember my dad had a term for it, because he's worked in the same area as well, positive reinforcement, or just
reinforcement,
just that it's very simple, but just that you're really positive, and it is genuine, you know what I mean, because you do want people to do well, and I think I have an empathy for teenagers because that was difficult for me. So it's very easy for me to be around teenagers and be very positive and very reassuring.
Well, you said it was very difficult for you being a teenager, and then that you were angry at something.
Yeah.
Paint that picture.
It was a difficult period in Ireland anyway. You know what I mean? There was a lot of poverty. There was situations going on in my house, in my home, that was difficult. Even like the political situation was difficult, you know?
I remember bodies, people being blown up and murdered. constantly.
Yeah, and even, see, my family was involved in the Workers' Party and politics, and there was different factions, you know what I mean, and different sides, and even in school you would have got shit over that, and yeah, it just wasn't a nice time for me being a teenager, really. And I think when I found music, it was a real soothing thing, a welcome distraction, and a kind of positive way to just channel my energies.
We can imagine being a teenager now with bleeding mad stuff happening on the global stage, fucking Palestine, Russia, Trump. What music must be for those people after having 2 years of fucking staying in your bedroom. There's a fucking global pandemic on, and now we're seeing it in this community. Yeah, every second kid is picking up a bleeding pair of drumsticks or a guitar or a microphone.
I never thought of that comparison, but it is interesting. It's like there's an outside noise. There was a loud outside noise in the 80s. There was so many different things happening politically, and then there was a lot of poverty and there was a lot of stuff going on. And you're right. Now there seems to be, particularly in the last 3 years.
We're 3 years from AI taking over everything. Nuclear war, poverty, homelessness.
Yeah. It's the wars from like it's the Ukrainian war, the Middle East war that we have, homelessness issue that we have here, and then it's the issues that we have around immigration that I see being, they're quite a loud noise, and I imagine a lot for people to take on. And like, you know, you get on and you live your life, but I think those things do affect you. Young people are sensitive, you know what I mean? And they don't know any different. I'm talking about being a teenager because I can reflect back on it. For me, I don't know if it was because in the 90s I wasn't a teenager anymore, but it just felt like things got a lot more calmer.
I met you in the 90s, Kelly. I knew you there first. I worked down in the U Club, U Project down in Priorswood, and I remember your dad being around. He was part of a collective, an arts group. There was a CE scheme, you know, and I met your dad, I met Pat Farrell, and I met Helen Lahert and all those people, like, you know. Yeah. And I remember your dad talking about that you had just finished a tour in America, you know, and I was like blown away, you know. And your dad was saying, no, it was tough. They had a rough time, you know. I said to your dad, I'd love to do music with these kids, and I was asking your dad to do music with them, but your dad didn't want to do it, like, you know. He was like, I wouldn't be able for them, you know, because I was working with the Mad Jokes, and then you came down and I got you onto the part-time panel or something like that, and it was deadly because we started doing music with a group. Really was brilliant crack. You were at to be teaching travellers and stuff like that, and then what happened was the music kind of dwindled away, but you were still on the panel. And I always needed somebody to be in the back of the minibus when I was going off doing, you know, canoeing or whatever we were doing. Yeah, it was deadly. It was a deadly time, you know. And you used to sit down the back of the bus and you'd be just...
Handy view, Bob.
Well, you'd be giving me, like, well, we would both be giving each other stick, you know. I'd be saying, ask Collie, does his ma working Fred's?
My ma worked in Fred's at the time.
That's right, she
Fred's
worked at the Vincent shop, yeah.
Vincent de Paul, yeah.
And I used to say, ask Collie, is his ma still working in the Fred's fashions, right?
Yeah, he used to be saying, Collie got all of his clothes out of Fred's. And that's making me think of, I had another band called Dragonfly that was successful, and we went to London, went to England and done a few things. We're doing really well. We're selling out Whelan's, and then our singer Mick Duff joined the Harry Krishnas.
Bastard.
As you do.
But we used to do Krishna stuff in the band. It was like before Kula Shaker. It was this around 92, 93, 94, before Britpop. And we were doing like Krishna songs, and we get, you know, being musicians, there wasn't a lot of, you'd be struggling, and the Krishnas were always an attraction. Like I remember going to the Fela festival and, you know, not having a tent and going and staying with the Krishnas. And then, and like they're playing music and giving out free food. And then you have to sit, they'd encourage you to sit in, listen to the philosophy, and then they'd be like singing Hare Krishna, and it was sounded great to me. But then the fear would kick in. Oh, hang on, I'm in a cult. You know what I mean? They're trying to, you know, because having all the Catholic stuff, you'd be getting the fear. But that was a really great time.
There was a great story in the Sunday World about the Krishnas. Some fella, you know, the headline was brilliant, you know. I had ice cream at a festival given to me by the Krishnas, and I woke up on a night.
Oh, that's, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, so there was all that fear talk.
Yeah, and that's not true. And actually, when Mick joined the Krishnas, they call it getting shaved up, but you know what I mean, when he became a monk, just before that, he was getting more and more into it. And like, I was into it too. Like I remember, you know, but I was fighting it. So like, he'd say to me, we'd be having a break from rehearsing, and I'd sit down and I'd say, and another thing about the Krishnas, you know what I mean, what's the story with this? And then one day he just said to me, I tell you what, for someone who's not interested in the Krishnas or spirituality, you ask a lot of questions. And I thought that was brilliant. You know what I mean? He set down a marker for me to realise, you know what I mean? Because I was trying to prove him wrong all the
You're
time.
obviously thinking about it.
I was in a spiritual dialogue with him. You know? Yeah. And so I went home to my dad. And we were all nuts at the time, me and the friends. And, we're in our 20s and messing around and drinking and stuff. And I said to my dad, I said, we're worried about Mick. And he goes, what are you worried about? I says, he's up with the Krishnas, on Dame Street. And what's he doing in there? I said, well, they're eating vegetarian food, right? What else are they doing? They're doing mantras and praying. And he says, and what else are they doing? I said, well, he doesn't drink around, or he doesn't. He says, I'm not fucking worried about Mick Duff. I'm worried about you and your brother and everyone else, you know what I mean? Because they're all, going out drinking and the way yous are going on. I'm not going to be worrying about someone who's, and that was a good perspective. You know, the way my dad would come out with some zingers now, you know what I mean? That would give you lots of perspective. And that would have taken away all that fear as well around Krishnas and stuff. And realised, no, it's all, Mick was in control. He was making, choices for his own life. But what happened was, so we done that, and then I got asked to join Lear very quickly when he left. And then I ended up on tour. I done a 4-month tour in America in '95 from January to April. And then at the end, we recorded an album in the Rocky Mountains. And we travelled all around. It was a roller coaster. Like, there was some real big highs now and big lows. We were like sleeping in people's basements and all sorts of dodgy stuff. But there was some really, really kind of brilliant moments. But when I come back, it was like I didn't have a plan anymore. Like, there was nothing. I was kind of run out of road. Like, I always wanted to have a record deal. I always wanted to go to America. When I say I always wanted to go, I'm talking about from 14. Now I was like 21. It's not a long time. But at the time, it felt like the plan I had since I was 14 to do of what I wanted to do, I didn't think it would come true. And it came true and it happened. And I ended up back at home with my mum and dad with nothing. He says, will you come up to Tala with Father Liam and work on these young adults who are on a drug rehabilitation program? And I just thought, no bleeding way. No, I'm not doing that. And he goes, yeah, what else are you doing?
Who said it's your outlet?
I said, what, are you busy? No, I'm not busy, but I don't do lessons because I never gave guitar lessons. I tried it and I felt it really intense, sitting across from someone, and I just thought, right, lessons is not for me. That's not going to be a thing for me. You know what I mean? I'm never going to do that. Just didn't enjoy it at all. Tried it once or twice.
I'm a rock and roll star.
It wasn't really that attitude. I just didn't. I actually tried it. I thought this could be a good way, but I just didn't enjoy it. I was just sitting there trying to teach someone guitar, and I just thought something about the energy of it just didn't work for me.
I can't do it either. I can't teach
One-on-one.
I can't teach somebody to play guitar.
Yeah.
I play along with them now and have the cracking on it, but I can't teach them.
So he says, you're going, you're not doing that now. And I was, in my early 20s. So I remember getting in the car, going up thinking, here I go, Tala. Haven't been to Tala before. Drug rehabilitation program. I was just, teaching a whole room of people. I just thought this is going to be my worst nightmare, And I went in and my dad was like, right, let's just throw a few chairs around. And I was saying to my dad, typical like of my dad, what are we doing? Don't worry, you know what I mean? We're here, aren't we? That'll be his attitude. Well, yeah, but what's the plan? Like, what are we teaching? How do we teach? What are we doing here? Just, you be grand. Haven't you got your guitar? And so people start arriving, and they're the same age as me. This young fella walked in, he goes, I like the guitar, do you play Oasis? And I was like, yeah, which song? He's like, Wonderwall. And I was like, great, you know what I mean? That's something, right? That's one thing. And then a girl came in and she sat down, other people come in. And I just got lost in that 2 hours. And they were doing art down the other side. They were like doing paintings and art, and then we were doing the music up here. And I was, at the end of it, I was floating. I was absolutely... It's like, people say you never know until you try something. You might have a skill or you might have a love or a passion that you never know. And that's why I'm always encouraging my daughter as well. Try out things, because there could be something there that you just never know until you... But I came away from that, and I was just coming home, said to my dad, are we doing it next week? And he was like, yeah, we're doing it next week. And I was hooked then. And then I think then after that, he brought me up to you to do the guitar lessons with the Travellers and the other lads from Darndale. And then we hit it off. And then when you moved up to Ballymun, then I was leading horse riding and hill walking and
slagging Sparky at the back of the van.
But you know what I'd say about that? I'd say one more thing about that experience was the difficulty for people who are in music is that the talent that you have, right, is your commodity for a job. So you're the thing. So when you think about it, it's probably like comedy as well. You become the thing that you're promoting. It's you, it's inside you, it lives inside you. It's like there's no getting away with it. And it can become obsessive, and the ego, and it can become all-consuming, and it feels like you can't get away from yourself. You know, you're promoting yourself and you're putting your name on posters, and you're talking about yourself and how great you are, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're reinforcing that all the time, and it's a very, like, I remember like getting to a place where I was really confused and depressed and anxious, and that was the antidote, going into a room and working with people, and like that ego seemed to just dissipate, and it seemed like it was the medicine. So ever since that, like meeting Sparky and then working with you afterwards, and my dad bringing me into that was the antithesis for me then working in music and promoting my own stuff, is that's where I got the balance all the time, is being able to walk into a room where you're just encouraged, that conversation we're having earlier about just encouraging young people and teenagers or whoever you're working with. That's really where it's at. It's not really about, well, for me anyway, it's not really about, like, I realise now, me and promoting myself as an artist and music took a long time for that to become secondary because of the ego or because of the dream. But the real contentment and happiness is working with people.
So the Hare Krishnas had it right all along?
Yeah. Well, the Christians have it right, and the Catholics have it right, and the Presbyterians have it right. They all have it right. But it's, and you know, the Buddhists have it right. It's the religious part of those things where things get confused, where humans gather and make things a little bit more confusing. But it takes a little bit of kind of getting into different religious kind of reading and self-help books and all that stuff, which I've done all the self-help books. I did for a period anyway, and they're all great. You know what I mean? One leads to the next. You mentioned your daughter. Yeah. Quearney. What's that like? Oh, it's amazing. Christy Dignam said to me when Flora was pregnant, I don't know if Quearney was born yet, but I think it was all happening, and it was around that time I was doing gigs with Aslan. And I grew up, like, my uncle was a friend of Christy's, so me and Christy were on tour in the 90s with Lear, and we reconnected. He was like, "How are you? Fireball's nephew," you know what I mean? And we can't.
Who's it? What's his name?
My uncle Fireball. Yeah. From Cardiff Bridge Avenue in Finglas. So I kind of grew up, and I remember Christy, and I remember him going out with his band and his mic stand, and I remember him playing Pink Floyd, putting the speakers in the window. He lived directly across from me, from my nana's house, and he put the speakers in the window, and he had Pink Floyd or Bowie Blair, and be playing football on the road, and then he'd have to go up and change the record. You know what I mean? I remember that. And but he said to me anyway, he said, "It's the best thing that'll ever happen to you." He says, "And remember this, it gets better every day." And I just hung on to that, because I remember at the time everybody else was saying, "Oh Jesus, you know, get a bit of sleep in now, because you won't sleep for the next 3 years." And you know, there was a lot of that sort of stuff, or you're fucked now, or you know. But Christy said that, and I remember thinking, I'm going to hang on to that now. That's a really positive. You know, it gets better every day, and it did, and it does. You know what I mean?
I remember talking to Flair in Belfast, and Flair had a young one when he was older. You know, I think he might have been 50 or something when she was born, you know. We were at a festival or something, you know, and somebody said to him, "What age is Circa now?" You know, and he was like, "Whatever, 3," and we're like, "Oh, the terrible 3, isn't the terrible," you know. Yeah. And he kind of just walked away, you know, and then he kind of turned back and he said, "No," I said, the 2s were great, the 3s were amazing. He said, watching her grow and watching her develop and all that kind of stuff. He said, it's all amazing to me. Then it's like that thing, you know, every day gets better. And I remember recently going up, she's about the same age as Quearney. Maybe she's a bit older, maybe 2 years older. She's into music and all that kind of stuff, and she's an amazing young one. And he was saying then, you know, he said, everybody said the teenage years, you know, I was going to, none of it, he said, because I just loved it. I loved every minute. I love all of our journey and all that kind of stuff. Like, you know what I mean? It's amazing.
No, it's lovely. Yeah. I have to meet Flair sometime.
Flair.
I just talk about him all the time, yeah.
But he's very, he is a huge fan of Leonard Cohen. So when you're talking to him, he'll you know, you'll be talking about this or something, and then he'll start whispering. And I'm bleeding deaf, like, you know, as you're leaning into him, and he's like, "The rose grew out of the cement," something like this, you know. And,
something really poetic.
What are you talking about, Flair? And then the other one he went through, him and his daughter love Dylan. They absolutely love Dylan. So I was up in the gaff, and Flair says to me, "What's your favourite Dylan song?" And remember, I went through that phase of listening to that song, "In the Summertime." And I just said to them, and they didn't know about it. They were playing it, and they played it about 40 times. and they were trying to get the meaning out. It's a real spiritual song, you know.
Yeah.
And it's about him falling in love with Jesus, actually, when Dylan fell in love with Jesus, you know.
Oh, it's that period, the Christian.
It was a bit after that, like, you know. They were getting into two of these mad conversations. But every Dylan song that I liked, they didn't know, you know, because it was like, there was one off time out of mind or something like that.
You like mad Dylan songs?
Absolutely.
You do always, like, I'm a big Dylan fan, and you always
came out
stuff
with
I've never heard, yeah.
track 9 on the...
on the second Christian album.
Yeah. And it's funny, and it was just, so what happened to me with Summertime was Chrissy Hine plays with James Walborn, who's one of my favourite guitarists, like, you know, in a band called The Rails, and he's in a band in London called Mother's Little Helper, right? And he's the guitarist with the Pretenders. So during COVID, he was sending her tracks of Dylan songs, just him playing the song, right? And she'd send him a track of her on an iPhone in the summertime, and then he played the guitar, and they just mixed it.
Yeah.
And they just put it out. They didn't, because it was COVID, they couldn't record it together. So when I heard her singing that, I connected with it. Now Dylan sings it far better, like obviously it's his song, you know. But I have to say, I think I might have listened to it 100 times one day, because it's just one of them.
It's great when you find a song like that. There's a great song called Seaboard at the moment that I'm listening to. Like when you find these little gems that didn't become hits, you know what I mean? And they're just...
There's one that Sinead O'Connor's on that I listen to, and I've given it to loads of people. Say What Your Soul Sings to You or something like that.
Right.
She done it with Massive Attack. It didn't really go anywhere. It was on an album that kind of didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
And then Plan B has an album that didn't really go anywhere, but it's stunning. And if, you know, people are going through relationship breakups, I go, listen to that.
Yeah.
Listen to it every day until the healing starts, you know.
Yeah, that's deadly. I love that.
Sometimes songs aren't ready to become popular, or who knows.
Colm Quearney, great to bleed and see you. Thanks for the chips.
Thanks for the batch.
No problem at all. Oh yeah, I get it. Thanks. You look great.
You're looking great too.
Thank you, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good today.
Yeah. You asked me a few minutes ago how I was doing. I said, I'm doing good today.
Yeah, because I'm doing the today thing as well. When you said that, I went, yeah, that's good.
And I'm not like Sparky. I'm not in the rooms, but I'm just doing today.
Yeah.
And this morning I woke up, and there was less anxiety, so I'm just doing today. So
yeah, that's good. And I remember my mother, my ma, giving me that wisdom as well. You know, being a part of Al-Anon, you know, that great spiritual program. You know, there's so many different simple things for living. You can start your day whenever you want, keep it in the day, you know, and the Serenity Prayer, all those, they're all just beautiful things that really help with anxiety and depression. So how am I doing today? I'm doing good today. I was really looking forward to meeting you two guys.
Were you? And
kind of doing this and hanging out, enjoying listening to the podcast. And I haven't done anything in a long time, like going back to Quearney. Like Quearney has changed my whole life in that I had to shift trajectory and just really kind of create a home and security for her for the last 14 years of just making sure that that's number one. And she's doing great, and she's grown up really well. And I haven't been releasing music really. Like I play live and play with the blues band. And today it was just really nice. I was thinking, God, I haven't done any kind of radio interviews or anything like this where I'm out in public kind of speaking. And so many different things have kind of changed for me since then. So what will this be like? Will I know how to speak and all that? But no, really good. You know, really good today. Hopefully tomorrow as well. I've got a great job. Got a brilliant job. You know, where I work creatively, and I work with kind of story writing, songwriting, playwriting, and I work with groups of teenagers, children, older people doing memoir work as well. And I travel around. I travel around the country, and I work in schools, and I work with additional needs groups. And then kind of beyond that, I kind of get to do my own thing, which is, you know, and I've accomplished a lot of kind of creative projects in the last few years, big projects that will probably see the light of day in the next 10 years probably, you know, because Quearney is at a certain age now. I think there's probably going to be a new trajectory.
When you were working on, because you done kind of like a Dylan play, and you were working in BIM, and Quearney was born, and it was just like all this storing up of, what am I doing? Which way am I fucking going? Am I crossing the road or wanting to be watching? I don't know what the fuck is going on. Am I a rock and roll star, or am I a teacher, or am I a dad, or am I... When you were going through it, it's fucking tornadoes, it's lightning storms,
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the fabric of it becoming who you are now. You know what I mean? You're a 51-year-old man. You're working, doing creative storytelling, songwriting with groups of people all over the country. You're a father. You're an accomplished musician. And I think when you were trying to grasp it around that time when Quearney was born, it seemed like it was all coming at all different angles. Some of it was slipping away and some of it was coming into you.
Yeah, it was like that thing I was talking about earlier. It was like that. Like I would have been in my mid-30s then. So like I'd kind of lived plenty of life and kind of been out and about. So it was really, when she was born, it was great timing. I was heavily involved in kind of community work then as well. But over the last few years, it's really like an ask, like you're talking about questions about like, who am I and what am I doing and how's things going to, you know, how will things unfold now? It really kind of helped me to kind of move more into the arena of community, which is really what the essence of who I am wanted to be. If it was a kind of a battle between head and heart, and the head wanting to be kind of some sort of successful musician or rock star. Well, it's interesting how different things happen at different times. At the time that Quearney was born, I got asked to do the BIM thing. And I'd spent, say, 20 years by 35 doing music with no real education, just out there in the field, raw, just playing and just doing gigs, making albums, producing albums for other people. No one taught me how to do it, really. It's just learn from other people and from being in studios and working with producers, and then just building the studio, making a studio like with very simple equipment. And so this is the thing. So I'd been doing it in relation to getting a job. I didn't have any experience other than I felt like I was a maverick that just went out. I was an artist and I was just making it up as I went along, and I was never really making a living from it. It's one of those things when you're an artist, people are always telling you that you're really good and you're talented and you're really good at it and keep going, but it's a real struggle. And there was a confidence. The confidence was really low as well because there was no recognition. I mean, when I say recognition, I mean just on a practical level. I wasn't selling any records. I wasn't selling out venues. So there was no recognition on that level. And that's reality. But then when I went into BIM, I think I was lucky because I'd done the community stuff. And again, no one taught me how to do that. I was working with Sparky, I was working with yourself. We'd spent a lot of time, me and you, Dean, doing stuff in Ballymun as well, just before that. And I'd released 4 solo albums with lots of other bands and produced albums, but I had this experience in education and I was a perfect fit, and they made me the head of songwriting. And that just lifted me up and made me feel like, you know, the recognition I wanted. It was like, and Imelda May had just sang a song with Jerry Fish that I'd written with Jerry. A few things happened at that time where the recognition just came and everything fitted. And I was like, what, you want me to be the head of songwriting? He says, yeah, and you have to design the curriculum for a degree. I was like, I didn't do great in the Leaving Cert. Don't worry about that. You've spent your life out in the field, and that's where you get your degree. So you're going straight on to do a PG cert in higher education, so which is a master's level. I was studying while I was teaching, so I was getting paid, and I was also in college, and Quearney had just been born. So things just came together for me, and then spent 8 years kind of running the songwriting department. And then I moved on to an organisation called Fighting Words. Again, doing songwriting with that and story writing, and I got more into writing as well. Like you mentioned the play that I wrote. So this is all like all my creativity is happening when I'm not working. Like I just got my priorities. I changed my priorities. My priorities are my family, and then after that, I get to have a bit of fun doing whatever I want to do. You know what I mean? But I'm not out in the world pushing it or promoting it per se.
You invited me up one night. You were with the Square Pegs in Arthur's on Thomas Street, you know. So it's you, Graham, and Connor Brady, is it? And the other guy, the bass player. The bass player always gets forgotten.
Well, we've had a few different bass players, but it might have been Brendan Priestley. Was he wearing the shades?
It was Brendan Priestley.
Yeah.
It was Brendan Priestley.
Shades indoor, and you know, he makes it work.
I never seen you having as much fun, Colm, on the stage. I was everywhere with you when you had an album called The World's Not Round, and it really hit in Ireland. It was on, it wasn't Phantom, was it Phantom Radio?
Phantom, yeah.
I remember driving you around the country because you didn't have a car at the time, and I loved it because I just wanted to be part of all that. You played Witness, you know, I think it was Witness in Fairley House, like, you know, we went down, it was deadly, like, you know, but I always felt you were on edge a bit, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You were like, I have to do this, I have to get this done, I have to plug that in to do this, right? Whereas when I went to see you with the square pegs, you were just floating, and you were, you know, even the interaction between you and Graham, the crack on the stage and all, it's just a tonic, you know. If you're in a band, or you have to turn up at 8 o'clock and be on stage and all that kind of stuff, it's a job, you know what I mean? And it's a chore or something. I thought that night that you were just like happy out.
Yeah, like when I went from being in bands and then I recorded my own album, The World's Not Round, never thought about the performance. I remember talking about earlier about getting on the stage, moving to the centre of the stage, and then everybody focusing on you and looking at you, and you having to deliver the goods. We just became very self-conscious, and I was kind of thrown a bit, and it took me again years to grow into that. And then when I started playing with Graham was a great person for me, and he's been like a great friend to me for the last 15 years. Graham was really, really talented, really successful drummer. When I was producing the albums, I'd always get Graham and I'd bring him into the studio. And then me and Graham would be playing on stuff, and then we played together with Monday, and we played on other stuff. And then Graham, we kind of figured out that both of our dads played in blues and jazz bands. He was really intrigued by that, and then we just started playing a couple of tunes in the studio. And he was like, Jesus, you're great. You know what I mean? You're really great. And I was like, you know, I didn't believe him. You know what I mean? Because you just, like, I always find performance, I always found it so hard, like being the singer. And he goes, but it's amazing. Going back to the thing about the teacher as well, the encouragement. Graham was like, no, you have it. You know, and when someone's like convincing you, I was just like, right, well, you know, I'll just lay here, like, I don't believe it. You know what I mean? But fake it, you know, what do you say?
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. I'll just keep hanging out with that, you know what I mean, with that vibe. And he says, let's start a band. And we had a rule when we started the band. I didn't ever want to be in a band again after being in all the bands. I was just working freelance. I still just work freelance. But he said, you want to be in a band? And I was like, no. And even though it was a good vibe, I said, no. The two of us made this rule that in the band, you could say no at any time, and we still have it. And it's why we're going so long. If someone doesn't want to do a gig, or doesn't want to do a song, or doesn't want to do anything, you can just step back, and it's the most relaxed vibe. You know what I mean? Even when we chat about everything, if he turns around and goes, no, I'm not doing that gig, or I'm not doing that. In the early days, sometimes we do 15 gigs in a year. There was years when we did one or two, because he'd be out with Glenn and, you know, really busy. But then again, you know, he'd come home and he wouldn't want to play. So we have this relaxed thing. And I just realised from early on with the vibe, you know, when you have a vibe with someone, I'm going to be playing with Graham until, you know, forever. Until, like, this band is going to be going for 50 years. Because it goes with the genre. It's blues. And we got it from our dads. You know what I mean? It was taught, it's never going to, our love for blues and jazz and kind of funky music, and we just, when you turn up and you play, it's just a lot of fun. And we're not trying to sell a record, and we're not trying to be big, and we're not trying to, so we took away all the things that are stressful about the music industry and just kept all the fun bits. And that's when I'm on the stage. And then when I start doing my own music here and there, and I haven't done a lot of it, like I was saying, I was able to bring that energy back to my own thing.
Yeah, that's it.
And then just play my own songs and sing them differently. And because blues is such an expressive music, you know, you have to be, you know what I mean? You're just expressing yourself. You're really, really connected. You're in your body when you're playing it. So when you bring that energy to your original stuff, that's the bit I was missing. A lot of my contemporaries that I played with over the years who were brilliant, like Kathy and Mundy and Jerry, and, you know,
Aidan Walsh,
especially Aidan, they all had it in buckets. I didn't have it back then. You know, it took me a long time to get to, like, it wasn't natural for me. Too shy, too insecure, too hung up. Yeah.
I was watching that Camden documentary, and Pete Doherty from the Libertines is in it.
Yeah.
And they kind of got everything they ever wanted handed to them by the time he was like 21, 22.
Yeah.
International rock and roll star. And then the train started to go off the rails.
Yeah.
And you see him now, and he looks rough. You look like you're in a lovely place. You're a 51-year-old father. You've got fucking most of your own hair. Both of your eyes work. Your teeth are still your own.
My eyes are grand.
You're not 13 stone over bleeding weight.
Like, he's someone who always kind of, you know what I mean? You try and get a bit of wisdom as you go along. You know what I mean? Or if you do the work, like I've had to do a lot of therapy from my 20s at different times just to keep going. But I've been able to, you know, live and have an enjoyable life. But the danger with music is, and like I was probably touching off it there, is that with some people, like, there's the person and there's the persona. And I've just doing the persona thing. If I watch Tom Waits or Nick Cave sometimes, I can't connect because I feel like it's a persona. There's something, it's kind of nearly scares me a bit.
Is that like...
Because you're losing yourself when that spills out into interviews and just talking to people. But then at home, the person like was like a Buddhist or yogi and, or is wonderful at home and cleaning the Delph, and that's who they really are. There's other variants of that out in the world, and Pete Doherty would be one where at a certain time it would have freaked me out listening to him being interviewed, because I can just see a person getting really lost, and there was a time in my life when I was getting lost. But the thing about Pete Doherty now, I never thought it'd happen to listen to him, and if I'm watching an interview or see him, I love listening to him because he's been on a journey, because it's a happy ending. He's actually come through it. Talking to Carl Barrett, like Carl Barrett was his friend. I've had friends like that in the music industry or in bands who I'm very close with, so I know what that's about. And people, when you get let down or they let you down, and people going in the music industry, in the entertainment industry, whatever it is, where there's a lot of things going on, drugs and drink, a lot of horrible stuff, and that getting fucking lost, not knowing who you are. So Pete Doherty, I think it's, I really like listening to him now. He's talking about cheese, and he's just really mellow. And the great thing, like when you hear him going, and we're going on tour and we're going to do this, and you know that they're going to go on tour and it's going to be all right. Because I've been on tour where it's a fucking nightmare. But they all look like they're in a headspace where they're cool with each other and it's all going to be all right. You know, it's dangerous, the kind of rock and roll picture that we were sold when we were growing up. I was into the 60s stuff. Like, I'm very suspicious about it, because I don't know if Bowie and the Stones and all these people and Hendrix could have done the stuff if they were really the drug and drink glamour, the way that was glamorized. I think any band that is productive and puts out work, they've got to be healthy to a certain level. But I think that the industry probably puts out an image of drug and drink and acting the bollocks. Yeah, I don't think it's healthy for the artists, you know?
Yeah, we had Fat Boy in, and he was in recovery now at that young age. Yeah. And he's kind of been and done all of that. You know what I mean?
Already. Well,
that's fucking amazing to look at, to listen to.
Yeah.
To go, wow, you've learned that. You've learned those lessons. The road is being fucking...
So it sounds like it was a fast track.
The road is being fast. What did you get from therapy?
Tools, techniques. In therapy, again, going back to the keeping it in the day, on those days, in those weeks that I needed it, I got the support to be, to feel okay then, in those years, in my 20s and 30s. There was definitely a big schism, you might call it, that I had to cross, in that I thought that if I admitted that I needed therapy when I was in my early 20s, that I was admitting that I had serious mental health issues. But I did have serious mental health issues, but it was the stigma that was, but it was like if I admitted that, I would completely fall apart. And then the thing, what happens is that when you admit it and you go in and you get help and you fall apart, you know what I mean? It's such a relief. And then you realise that, it's okay. As soon as I got well, I start telling people, I start speaking openly about getting help. You know what I mean? I'm talking about, I wouldn't speak openly about it in that if I noticed somebody else needed help or I was speaking to a friend, I would say to them, oh yeah, I'm in therapy. Just, simple things like that. Because I realised that it really makes a difference for people to kind of just break through that thing. But maybe it's not there as much nowadays. It probably is.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, for some people at different times. But at the time when I was going through it, there were probably none of my friends were in therapy in the 90s. And it wasn't something that I felt that I could admit to for a while. But as soon as I got well with it, I would tell people. And they'd look at you with two heads. You know what I mean? Not in a bad, just because they'd be worried for you, or, you know what I mean? But you go, no. But when you know you're all right, then you can go, no, but I'm grand. It's helped me. And then I was getting into meditation, and I get into, so I tell people when meditating really works for me, I talk about that with people. Because it was I talked about the 80s and the way I felt then, the anxiety. And so in the 90s, down in late 90s, start finding therapy and finding meditation and reading books and then self-help. But my sister was giving me self-help books. And that was, I love hearing about people that read a self-help book and then, they go on that journey, that then they read another one and then another one. And because I actually really missed that period of my life where I was just eating all those books up. They just make you feel good. And I've heard a few people saying this. Then you get to a stage with the self-help books where you realise they're all just saying the same thing. You know what I mean? They're all saying the same thing in a different way.
Yeah, they're all like fingers pointing towards the thing, which is like accepting who you are or accepting where you're at and that you're all bleeding right. Yeah, you are a bit fucking nuts, but we're all a bit nuts.
Yeah.
And we've all had shit situations, like you were explaining growing up. You know, it's shit at home, it's shit in the world.
Yeah.
You find music, you go on a fucking journey, you're a rock and roll star by 21, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it goes from a place of when you have all that anxiety and you're growing up, it's so internalised and you're the only one that's going through this. And even if I was to look at a self-help book, I'd go, Jesus, don't read that, because it'll be like admitting that there's something wrong with you. And then when you read it, you realise, oh, this is happening to loads of people. And then the self-help books start getting sections in stores start getting bigger and bigger, I remember. And I remember going into it and like hiding in them, hoping people wouldn't see it. But then you realise, like you were saying, that you're connected actually to everybody. And then I realised everybody's not all right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody's not okay. And it's all right.
And it's all right.
And it's all right, yeah. Rather than thinking, not only me, it could be, you know, and then that.
It's everyone.
Yeah, it's everyone, yeah.
Just no one gets away with it. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
I was swimming at the High Rock the other night, and I'm going to go for a swim after this because it's good medicine for me. And there was 4 of us standing there, all lads, and all the conversation was about, how are you? How are you feeling? How are you today? How's the anxiety? People going, I'm on this medication. I'm using this app for meditation, or, you know, and it was free flowing, and it was hugs, and it was holding people, and it was saying, you know, to use the cliche, it's all right, it's okay not to be okay, you know.
Not everybody's on that. Like, we're unique and all that stuff. I remember going for therapy in my 20s, right, and running towards it because I needed it, you know. And you remember saying, like, I would have said to my mates, I have to go for supervision in the morning. That was the best way to describe it.
That's a lovely cover up. Yeah,
it was a cover up, and the thing is about shame, you know, and shame, you know, like I remember going to meetings, you know, recently in the last 4 years, and not going to meetings in Ballymun because I didn't want to see people. I do therapy once a week in the local recovery centre, you know, like I go in there now all the time, and I go in and out, and people will say to me, "What are you doing here?" And I'd say, "I'm getting a bit of therapy," and it's great because we can talk about that stuff, like, you know what I mean. And if somebody looked down upon me for being in therapy, I would let it go now. It wouldn't bother me. Before, it would have been all up in me head. Like, you know, if, you know, a family member would be saying to me, what are you talking about with this therapy? That doesn't freak me out anymore, you know what I mean? I think the 3 of us were growing up, were very, very sensitive in our 20s and our 30s. And our 40s were very, very sensitive, 3 very sensitive people. And we worked together and we were able to talk at this level all the time, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, you know, if you had said to me, you know, you were going for therapy, you wouldn't have heard me going, that's a load of bollocks or anything like that. I wouldn't, because I would have been doing the same and he would have been doing the same.
No, I think you're right. I think, yeah, because we were saying earlier, everybody's able to, or everybody's on this kind of, able to have this conversation. But I think you're right. It's probably not as
I'll give you an example, right? I'll give you an example. A young person, 24, 25 years of age, reached out to me the other day for serious drug situation, right, in their lives. And I said to them, there's meetings called CA meetings, you know, and I said, you know, I suggest to you for, you know, oh, no, I don't need that now. I don't need that. I'm not letting people know my business, you know, that kind of stuff. So that's how I'm talking about. The 3 of us are lucky. We have mates that we can get down to the thing. Like, you've mates within the music business that you could talk to this stuff about, you know. There are people in our lives. There's people I work with don't know that I'm in recovery. I don't talk about it, you know. I don't, it's not something that I talk about it on this because I think it helps. Yeah. You know, I think there are people who, through the podcast, have reached out to me saying, I'm in trouble, any chance for, you know, for a bit of help. And they're still knocking around recovery, you know what I mean? Yeah. Which is great. That's the reason why I do it, because other people help me, and we try and pass that on. I think we are lucky. We, even in our 20s and 30s, when we were sensitive, when we were, you know, reaching out and reaching up, and we had each other, you know, we did have each other, you know, and, you know, myself and Dean would be very, very honest with each other around a lot of the stuff that's going on. We spoke about it on this. We speak about it all the time, you know. And I think we're lucky, you know, and I have a lot of gratitude for that because I see so many people who don't have it, you know what I mean, who can't express themselves. I see young people who are struggling with their sexuality and they don't talk about it. I see young people struggling with, you know, fitting in and peer pressure and social media bullying and all that kind of stuff. And they say, no, don't say that, you know. Yeah. And it's when we find our voice. What did the teacher say to you, Dean? Put your head up and your
Chin
shoulders
up,
back.
shoulders back.
Yeah.
There was a fella out at High Rock, and he's like typical white van man the other night, but he's broken the back of it because he's coming out swimming and he's talking, and he turns up with his brother, and his brother's still in that mode where it's like the shutters are down, I'm not talking. It's that fucking thing you were talking about, like in the 90s or the 80s, where you better not be going to fucking therapy, you weirdo.
Yeah.
You better not be into Hare Krishnas. His brother's like that. And usually I'd go up and hug this guy, the guy who's all like finding his fucking expression and his spirituality and all that. Yeah. He ran up to me. Two of us are there in our shorts, soaking wet, and he just wrapped his arm around and he goes, "This is fucking great, isn't it?"
Was this now the brother?
So not the brother who has the shutters down. This is the other brother.
So what was the brother with the shutters down?
He's standing beside us, looking at it going, there's something there that these lads have. There's a little bit of magic, and I wonder what it is.
Yeah.
And if I fucking stand close enough to them, it might rub off on me, you know?
That, like we're talking about cliches here that really work. You know, it's good to talk and to talk to someone. Sparky, when you were talking there earlier, like that could have been me. Not like it was only because I got so bad that I spoke to someone. But I would have rather keep the shutters down at that time and keep them down for good and just live in that world where you're just white knuckling it and just getting through life. But the reason why it's so good, and that stuff you were talking about, when people hang out with you and they're doing the hugs and you're breaking down those kind of walls and making it easy for people to talk, it's a complete revelation. It really can be such a revelation that you realise at the end of it, the stuff that's under the shirt, it's like I say, it's nothing. A lot of the time there's absolute freedom there. There's a complete freedom. And the thing that you were trying to protect, whether I don't know what it is, like whether it's the ego or the stigma or the shame that you're going to be found out, but there's nothing there. You know what I mean? And then that there's a dialogue that's at the beginning. And once that dialogue, you know what I mean? You can't put that back in the cage. Once you've opened that dialogue is starting. Hopefully you would think that people could just talk, and like it's great that you do the swimming thing and so many people go down and hang out and have a chat and just have that space just to kind of be free and chat. Do you know what it is? It's kind of like the Buddhist. I remember hearing the kind of Buddhist thing saying that like the reason why a lot of people like being around Buddhist teachers or nuns, and look, it's not like they're all enlightened. Who knows which ones are? Like they also say, usually it's people who are in the audience, you know, listening. They're the ones. But you can tell when someone has that wisdom and has that knowledge and has that experience that they've been through, and they know that everything's all right, and they know that everything's going to be all right. That when you're suffering, you just really want to be around those people because you're just picking up the vibe that everything's going to be okay. Like it's just like going to a therapist. It's just basically someone holding the space to you, and they're sitting there and they're going, everything's grand. Yeah, life is mad, life is nuts, but you know, it's grand. You know what I mean? And you're hanging on to that for as long as you need it, and you've begun a dialogue. You know, and the most difficult part was to start the conversation, was to go in there and say, I'm not okay. You know, you would just hope that people that are struggling would, you know, do that, would just start that conversation.
I was in therapy the other day and I was talking. What was amazing about it is it's like when I'm talking that I see the words coming out of my mouth. You know, when I hear what I'm saying and then I'm going, that's a load of bollocks, Spark. You know what I mean? So the inner voice is chattering to me going, you're fucking useless, you're fucking easy, you're da-da-da, you know, you're right? So you're getting all that right. And, you know, I heard Mick Savage saying on his podcast, if somebody else was to say that shit to you, you know, you're useless, you're a fucking crap guitarist, you're a fucking brutal fucking father and all that. If somebody came up and said that to you, you'd say, fuck off away from me and leave me alone. You do that, you would. You just say, go the fuck away from me. But when it's your own voice saying it to you. So what happens is that when you get into a space, which is a healing space, right? Whether you go and talk to the priest or whether you go and talk to the Buddha, the monk, the Buddhist monk, or the Hare Krishna, you talk to your mate, you talk to your ma, you talk to your brother, your dad, your wife, whatever it is, and you say this out loud, right? And when somebody really listens to you, basically they're holding that space for you to say, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I'm a fucking loser, you know, and I think blah, blah, blah. And they don't go, no, you're not. They don't say to you, you're grand. They don't do that. They let you come, and then what happens is you go, I actually don't believe that. I actually don't believe any of that. Because when you get it out of yourself and you're saying, wherever there's chatter that goes on in us, now, to be honest with you, this week I'm in a great space, and I'm fucking practically in love with myself, and I'm having a great space because I'm putting a bit of work in. you know, I'm putting the work in, I'm not listening, not spoofing, I'm not being dishonest or whatever that, you know what I mean? There's diesel gone into the car, I'm not putting petrol in the car instead of diesel. But there was a couple of weeks before this where there was loads of hiccups. The dog died. I got sick. I got high blood pressure. I was put on medication for the rest of my life, you know, and there's all these little hiccups. And I could have easily used them. I could have leaned into them. But I was hearing Dean's voice saying, no, lean into the other stuff. And that's what I did. I started to do a bit of work. I started going to more meetings. I started talking to people. We're talking to you. We're talking to him. We'll be on the phone and I'll be telling you.
Yeah. And
what happens then is that when the words come out, you take them from the psychic inside your head, right? When you take them from in here and you throw them out on the ground and you have a look at them, you know, you're kind of going, I actually don't believe that, you know. And it's like what Max Savage said, if somebody come up to you and said, you're a brutal comedian and you're shy, you tell them to fuck off. You know, you'd say to them, go the fuck away from me. I don't want to hear you shy. Leave me alone. But when it's you saying it to yourself inside and you keep that inside yourself, that is death. That is the worst thing that you can do. I think for me, that's the worst thing that I can do, is to listen to the internal chatter of my own voice giving me negative feedback, right? And once I get it out, the other person doesn't even have to fucking speak. They don't even have to say, yeah, grand. They don't have to say it. This guy, he just gives you a bit of feedback and it's deadly. It's soothing, it's deadly, you know. And I always leave there feeling deadly, you know. Yeah. And I even go to meetings, like, I remember a fella saying to me one day, if you went to a meeting and you could only lie on the floor and not say it, you'd still come out of that meeting feeling better, you know. And it's got to do with that fellowship, camaraderie, being with other people, you know. Like, I was at a meeting today and there was a fella speaking and it might as well have been me speaking because of the identification.
So I had that conversation with my ma last night about if it's truth, if it's honesty, it is you speaking, because we're all basically going through the same fucking thing. So if it's true for Colm Quearney, it's true for everyone. If it's the truth, if it's honesty, if you're not holding stuff back, if you're not lying to yourself, if you're not being dishonest, that bleeds into everybody. That connects with everybody. And you can speak, if you're saying your truth, it's fucking true for me and I can feel it. And I don't actually have to say anything. I just sit here, look at you in your eyes and fall in love with you because it's the truth.
Yeah. And a lot of that chatter and internal chatter can be when you separate yourself from other people and it becomes just this thing that, like you were talking about, you'd ring me, you'd ring Dean and you'd have a chat. Sometimes when that chatter starts and it starts to build and build and build, sometimes it feels like the way to go is that you don't want to share that with anyone. You want to, maybe you're ashamed of it, or maybe you want to control it. You want to be the one to fix it. Yeah. But when you actually sit down with other people, whether it's in therapy or you go to church or you go to whatever your spiritual program is and you share it, yeah, that's where like we look after our physical health, like that's like mental care. I think it's important to have an ongoing, like we have an ongoing physical therapy, you know what I mean, that helps. That's what I've begun to realise, is that there has to be an ongoing mental care that's in place all the time. And like for the longest time when I was in therapy, the question at the back of my head is, when I get this fixed now, I'll be on the pig's back, you know what I mean? Just get this mental health thing sorted out, boom, I'm going to be skyrocketing, you know. Then it'll just come up again, and I'm like, fuck, here is it, you know, the same feelings, the same thing. But it's like I get it now, it's all right. It's just, and then even the show, I'm going to be dealing with this all my life. No, it's just like you're going to be dealing with physical things. You have to look after yourself physically. You have to look after yourself mentally. And then for me, the kind of person I am, and I don't presume about everybody else, is the spiritual part. Spiritual part is very for me tied in with the mental health, and then that's obviously tied in with the physical as well, because you have to be grounded. I used to read about this stuff all the time. You read it, fake it till you make it. You know, you have an epiphany at some stage where all the books meld into one, and you realise it's just, I need to be around people. I don't need to isolate. I need to do things. I need to do some of these tools and techniques that I'm at the being handing over money to a therapist for. You know what I mean? You have to walk the walk sometimes and do. It's just like you have to get up and go to the doctor. You have to get up and go to the therapist, but then sometimes you have to get up and do the things that the therapist said and use those tools. It's been a really interesting chat. It was interesting what you were saying there. Yeah, like because we were going out on a tangent going, everybody's really connected now. But yeah, we can't presume that everybody, I think we were lucky in that we connected and we kind of really helped each other. And then when I found Graham, we've all found different friends at different times that we've gravitated towards that have helped. And you'd like to think that that people would, you know what I mean, have that friend, you know what I mean, find that friend where that you can talk to.
This has been a deadly podcast, I have to say.
I was thinking of your relationship with your dad and your relationship with your child, because you're your dad now.
Yeah, I'm the dad. He had 6, I have 1.
Yeah.
So there's loads of different things, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's been an amazing journey with having Kaifina and having a child, is appreciating what my dad and my mum went through. And there's loads of things that are the same and there's loads of things that are different.
Have you written any songs since Kaifina was born? Have you written? Because I remember listening to you bawling my lamps out because you were playing songs about dolphins and all that. It was just totally connecting with me.
Yeah. Do you mean have I written songs about horror or just written songs in general?
Well, have you written songs about her?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I have. But I wrote an album with her, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. So, with her. And like I've mainly done it, but like when she was growing up, like I was saying earlier, when I realised my main thing was just to work and have a job, which I never had when I was 35. It was actually 9 to 5. But I was lucky to get the job, say, at BIM. So what I done was because it's what you do when you're creative and when you're musical. We wrote loads of children's songs with my wife, with Flora, and we were playing instruments. And we've got like Rexy the dog, we've got Destiny Says Things Are Meant to Be, we've got Universal Song, Cool Cat, like just lots of fun. So they're kid songs. She's 14 now, so I've been working with RTE and I'm releasing I've turned it into a radio program called Kaifina's Universal Song. So it's about this young girl who uses songwriting as a superpower to solve all of her problems that she comes across in life. So I've been recording it and writing the scripts and recording the scripts and working with the actors. So it'll be a radio thing that's released around October.
Have I heard any of them? Have I heard Universal Song?
No, you probably Universal Song was on the other musical. So I've taken that for this.
Is it the same recording?
No. Well, it's the same song, but it's sung now by an 8-year-old.
Oh, okay.
And then Rockavoy, which I done as a play with the Gaiety School of Acting, which was written for teenagers. That's been revamped. That's the next project to go back to as a screenplay after this. So I've been doing these projects, and then I've also written a book on songwriting.
Would you fuck off?
Well, I've done it now listen, it sounds like I'm saying a lot, and like I said, I haven't done stuff, I haven't been out in the world, and I feel like it's a lot to say, but I haven't been out in the world in 14 years. I've been working, but I love what I do. Like, I love my creative time and my creative space, and I work hard at it, outside my job. But it feels like this today could be the start of maybe transmitting some of those bits of work that I have, sharing those with the world.
If I was to put one piece of your work at the end of this podcast,
something like that, yeah.
What's the one that does it for you?
I think what would suit what we're just at the beginning talking about, which is like a kind of poetic song, but it's really about, I went to Kathmandu. Where was that? Nepal? Yeah, I went on a trek, and when I came back I wrote a song called Himalaya. That's a lovely little kind of mellow.
That's the one I was thinking about. That was what I was thinking about.
Yeah, it would actually suit the tone of this conversation. But that'd be a good one.
Suit the Harrys as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Listen, thanks for having me, lads.
No, thank you, Colin, for coming in, because I know you're very helpful to me when you give feedback on the podcast, and I love that. Well,
I've been enjoying listening to the podcast, and I found it therapeutic, and I love the places that you go with it, and it's usually good crack as well. I don't know if this one was good crack, but we went kind of deep and heavy.
No, we do deep and heavy, and we do good crack.
That was the chips at the start.
You're the only guest who came on that arrived in with a bag of chips and 2 potato slices out of the local chipper.
And do I have to say anything about the batch?
There was no batch. So thanks, Colm.
Colm Quearney. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brothers.
You can play a melody, play it on my heartstring. You will hear me sing it, you will hear me sing it for you. I'll sing it for you, sing it for you. You could hold it in your hands, just like the Himalaya. I will be sitting on top. I'm laughing at you, laughing at you. When you ride your bicycle, can I be on the crossbar? We're riding with no helmets on. We're riding with wind in our hair. There's wind in our hair, wind in our hair.
Here, fuck off, will you? Fresh, yeah?